All right, so good afternoon and welcome to the session. So today what we're going to do is we're going to be looking at, in learning outcome 1, we understood theoretical background and also some, basically some background about why do we need to have performance management and reward management within the organizations. We looked at some theories, some frameworks to see how, performance management cycle can be put into place by HR. And at a later stage, we looked at how the reward management system actually is constructed, or the components of reward management system. We also briefly looked at what are the aims and objectives of a reward management system when HR tries to put this into place. In the learning outcome 2, we basically looked at understanding how these performance management systems or performance management in general and reward, compensation, remuneration, incentive, bonus, whatever word we use, under the umbrella of reward management, how do they get affected from internal and external factors? So sometimes organizations have to benchmark their pay scales, their bonus structures with competitors in the market, or with external, basically external factors which affect, the creation of these systems. So it could be that in some countries there's a pay structure or a tax structure of 20%, 30% basic. In some countries it is 35%, in some countries it's 40%. So pay structures and reward structures have to be adjusted, and some of these things, law, legislation, labor laws, when we talk about basic things, economic climate, sometimes they affect these are external factors which affect the performance and reward management system within the organization. So in learning outcome 3, what we're essentially going to be looking at is how to design a reward management system for an organization. And what are the key things that we have to look at considering when we design, this system. And the other bit that we're going to look at is also understand how sometimes, PMC, performance management cycle, differs and, obviously it's a different process, but how it gives inputs into designing the reward management system. We will also look at, sometimes within organizations you see that they tend to design, they tend to create and then implement these systems, and the rewards which are essentially created could be either financial, monetary as we called it yesterday, or non-financial rewards. So we'll look at in general, basically pooling some of the information that we have studied and the knowledge that we've gained in LO1 and LO2 into LO3 to basically look at understanding how do we design one system, how do we monitor it, and what are the benefits of that system that we create for individuals in general, when individuals work within team, and if there are any drawbacks, then we will study that. Is that okay?
Yes, please.
So let's look at, first quickly recapping in terms of what is performance. So when we look at performance, you give certain, targets, objectives. There are certain SMART goals which are given to employees. And at some stage, you want these goals and objectives to be accomplished. And this, when they accomplish it or achieve it, leads to the measurement of performance. Now, this measurement of performance sometimes they are depending on the hierarchy, the culture, and also the stature in which the employee is working within the organization. Let's put it this way, has an outcome in terms of what reward or incentive the individual ends up receiving. So sometimes you would see that employees at the junior level will get maybe an annual pay rise after the performance appraisal, after their appraisals have been done by the line managers. The middle management ends up getting maybe not just a pay rise, but also bonus structures or some incentives which they can get. It could be financial, it could be non-financial, and in some cases you will see that at the mid to the higher management level, some of these incentives and bonuses tend to be disproportionate because the amount of roles and responsibilities they have require extra risk, or for example, higher risk to be taken, and because that risk involves more efforts, more commitment, engagement, and loyalty towards the organization. Sometimes these incentives or rewards which are given are more commensurate to the title and the position they occupy in the organization. Now, most organizations have performance appraisal. Every year, thousands, millions of organizations at least do this basic process of doing an appraisal for an employee who works within the organization or a business. Now, sometimes in small businesses, these appraisals could be verbal, but in most cases, they are documented, and you typically tend to follow, I say, certain formats. And if I look at giving an example, and this is something which I'm going to send over, as an exercise for you to do, is that when you look at a performance appraisal format, this is a very commonly used format which we'll see, which is a short format, which normally a manager would send across, to the employees or people he manages. And basically, the whole purpose of doing this appraisal or appraisal meeting is to decide whether the person's main scope and purpose of job is fulfilled, and the person happy in that job, has the skill sets required to do the job. Is there a broad agreement on the objectives and the tasks for the employee to complete, or targets? And then sometimes you will see that there is a differentiation between objectives and targets. Objectives are defined first, and they then are broken down into SMART targets. And whether these targets are achievable or not is actually evaluated in the performance appraisal. And then at the end of it, the employee has put in his bit or has done his best to basically look at, has made the efforts to try and achieve the targets set, but has not been able to, then the gap areas are identified, and these gap areas then are channelized into, with the help of HR department, into learning and development or training and development for the employees. But a basic, self-appraisal format talks about things like, do you have an up-to-date description? Do you have an up-to-date action plan? Do you know what are the requirements for your job? What are the opportunities you want to discuss? For example, if you have or you want some different opportunities, these are required. And then how can the improvements be carried out with the help of the manager or with the help of the organization, which could basically help the employee work more effectively. So this is a very simple form of performance appraisal, which most organizations at least have in place in order to ascertain whether the person is happy in the job role, how motivated the employee is, has the targets given, key result areas been achieved, and if they've not been achieved, what is the training and development required? And last but not the least, they take a bit of feedback to see if the skills, aptitude, knowledge, of the individual and the number of years of experience the individual has is actually utilizable by the organization in the role and responsibility being given. Now, a slightly different, format, which you will tend to find in organizations, which is a more detailed performance appraisal, is something like this. And this runs into multiple pages, and these might be, as an HR manager, you might want to have a type of a performance appraisal. When I say type, I mean you have performance appraisals for all stature grades of employees, maybe at the front office, in the different departments, in the junior management, middle management, and, senior management. You have a performance appraisal format for everyone, which is, in working in the organization. But the format of the appraisal might differ depending on the grade and the title or the roles and responsibility the individual has. So in a nutshell, if I show you, this one is a very basic appraisal format, which might be applicable for people who are normally given delegation of responsibilities or tasks or jobs are given on a daily basis, weekly basis. And when you look at managers, their appraisal formats or appraisal forms are slightly more elaborate, because you want to get more input and information into it, and you need to have some discussion points. So you will see that this performance appraisal form essentially has certain parts. The first part consists of, self-evaluation. So they have been asked to state responsibilities, duties. They understand what is their understanding of duties and responsibilities. Then the second part talks about certain discussion points. So this is an opportunity wherein the manager or the line manager is actually asking for feedback about his role, the organization responsibilities, elements of the job which he finds difficult or least interested in, and things like that. Then the second part in the appraisal is looking at measurement standards. and the employee is asked to score on these standards, which is a self-scoring format. And then on the basis of this, it is further broken down into understanding what are the basic skill sets which the employee requires to carry out that role. So it's maybe if you're looking at somebody who works in bid management or looks after tenders, might need to have commercial judgment as one of the skill, needs to have product and technical knowledge. Sometimes planning, forecasting, and budgeting is an important skill which is required, because if they're going to be looking after profit and loss and tendering for the organization, they need to have these skills. So these, and this is a list which can be expanded. So depending on the organization, the role, the responsibility, and the function which the individual does, they are different. The second part actually consists of where the appraisee, that means the person undergoing the review, has to describe and discuss self appraisal. They have to put down in their own words how, in terms of their own words, how they understand what is their job purpose, what is their job role, what is the purpose of their role when they work in that job, and what are the priorities which they understand from their job description have been given, which match into or kind of relate to strategic responsibilities given to them or strategic objectives mapped into for the organization. Then they are asked to do a self-review, and they write down certain things or points which are points that they need to discuss. So this is an opportunity here with the employee to be able to bring forward some points of discussion he or she feels which are required to be discussed in the appraisal, because of which maybe the performance has been affected, because of which maybe the output has not been up to the mark, or because of which the employee has not felt comfortable delivering those, maybe responsibilities, or there are gap areas which he or she feels they need to discuss, which are troubling them or bothering them. And again, there is a self-scoring, and then objectives are listed down, and there is a self-scoring. And then again, the scoring is here done by the manager. So the first part looks at scoring being done by the employee and their understanding of the job role. In the second part, they describe it, but the scoring is done by the manager. And then the appraisee, the person who is doing the appraisal, looks at comparing the two and sees what are the areas in which the scores are low or are not matching, and those then are put into what is called the training and development needs. So that discussion then happens with the HR, wherein they look at how these areas which are required and essential for the job are to be filled by providing proper training and development to the person working in that role. Then they discuss future areas of responsibilities, what are the skill capabilities required. And you might, in your appraisal, say that a live example would be that you're having an appraisal with your manager, and you say that, okay, I've been in this role for 5 years. I've done, I've done different aspects of this particular role, and I've done them quite well because I've achieved 100%, or I've received increases in pay every year, year on year, and now I want either a different role, or I want, say, for example, a promotion in my role. So that comes up for discussion because these areas, are defined in this, and the employee has the opportunity, the appraisee has an opportunity to put these points down for discussion with the appraiser. And then whatever is the outcome of it is documented here, and then this appraisal form is then taken by HR to see, okay, if the appraisal has been good, everything has been met, targets and objectives have been agreed, this person is in line to get this particular reward or this particular increase in wage or salary and these benefits, which are defined in the reward management system. So it all starts off from an appraisal form. Now, depending on the organization, the roles and responsibility, the hierarchy of the individual in the organization, and last but not the least, the culture and what are the policies and processes defined, every organization has some sort of a appraisal form. Now, this appraisal form I have picked up from the website called businessballs.com. And this is an open template which is available, which a lot of organizations pick and choose and evaluate and then customize it to meet their requirement as far as appraisals are concerned. But there could be other templates as well. So I'm going to share both these templates, one which is quite elaborate and the second one which is quite, brief but shows and captures the main objectives of doing an appraisal, which is to understand what has happened in the last year, what things went well, what things did not go as planned, and what are the areas in which the improvements have to be done, and they are identified so that they can be identified into something called learning and development, and that is the way they move it forward. Is that okay so far?
Yes.
Okay. Now let's look at once we've looked at, because when we talk about performance and reward management, the basis from which it starts is the appraisal. If that is clear, then the appraisal is primarily intended to find out how much, we talked about some relationships between things like performance and management. We talked about relationship between, reward management and, learning and development. And some of these things come out quite clearly when the appraisals are done. Now let's look at an example. Let's look at an example in terms of when we talk about, things which are required to put this system or appraisal in place. Now, when we look at that, we took an example of British Airways yesterday, so I'm going to stick to the same example. Now, if you see, yesterday when we discussed that British Airways in the 90s focused on a reward or a culture which was created in the organization by HR because they prioritized that they wanted to win over customers and define the image of the airline on the basis of customer services. Do you recall that?
Mm-hmm.
Now, they created a performance management cycle for a system, and also the reward management was tailored, the system was tailored in such a way that people providing the right amount of customer service and helping customers, and obviously helping to get positive reviews from customers because of the service rendered, allowed the system to reward those individuals in terms of doing the right things. So here, when I look at the same example and extend it, when they look at hiring crew, when I say hiring new people like air hostesses or pilots and things like that, what they are keen about is that they try and hire staff because of their, it's a services organization. It provides service for which the customers pay. So here the expectation is that they try and recruit the staff which have, which are quite tuned to giving the right amount of customer service, right type of customer service, and they are able to meet the expectations set by, the management within the organization. So things like when I look at expectations of customers being met, we're looking at basically picking out different types of employees which maybe travel an extra mile to help customers out, try and help. When I say, if you imagine an airport and you just for a minute think that you're trying to, you're going from one location to the other, you're trying to take a flight. Now, sometimes when you go to the desk, you find the persons at the front desk being very helpful. Even if you put the right things in place, they say, can you give me a boarding pass or can you give me this? So they're trying to ask you the right questions to make you comfortable, give you time to be able to produce that document. If not, then they ask you to say, okay, I'm sorry, this is the minimum requirement. Can you go across to this desk, get that over, and then come in and we'll check you in. So you see that they have that orientation of understanding the customer's viewpoint, and that is where the organization's performance management is defined. Is when they recruit people, they look at very clearly a couple of things. They look at people who have traits which are going to be helpful to customers. They are going to be proactive. They're going to be responsive. They're going to be alert. And they are also going to be people who are generally going to be in the framework of having the right attitude to be able to help customers out. Because it's a service industry at the end of the day. So here, the HR then looks at putting some sort of a performance and reward management strategy in place, which picks the right employees when they advertise for new crew to be recruited, or for example, they want the right type of crew to be recruited, which has the skill and experience because they've worked in a similar kind of an aircraft or an environment. And when you see, in general, the airline industry, when they pick up people for recruiting, they look at picking up people from recruiting from industries like the hotel industry, the travel industry, because they understand that they are coming in from services background, and they understand how a customer needs to be served. Now, let's look at some of the other detailed objectives which you would, as a HR manager have when you are looking at recruiting employees. For business. Now, here, what they want to be able to look at is that every employee which basically looks at joining the company has the ability to understand that time management to a certain extent is going to be very critical, because if flights leave on time, flights land on time, they are meeting the expectation of the customers, and in this case, what they're looking at is employees who have excellent time management skills and are able to manage or multitask within the time given to carry out various set of activities. Sometimes they also look at picking out people which because of their prior experience have the ability of not making mistakes in certain situations. So sometimes what happens is, if you see when you're traveling in an airline and you've ordered a specific type of meal and you've specified that at the time of booking or while you've checked in and things like that, but you end up receiving a standard meal, the customers are normally quite furious. So what tends to happen in airlines is that you will see that people who are either vegan or some have ordered a specific type of meal, they tend to get the service first because those meals or those things are limited. And in order for the crew to ensure that these mistakes are not made, what they do is they label them the moment they get in. They check in the inventory received, has this been received, and things like that. Now, this shows proactiveness. This shows an attitude that they want to comply and conform with what has been set, in the job description, and they are being proactive to avoid mistakes which can be done, while they carry out their job function. Now, the example basically looks at, a couple of things related to when the recruitment and selection is happening. Like in a couple of years back, when I say a couple of years back, maybe about 6 to 10 years back, when the ATHE aircraft came out, the requirement of crew within British Airways, British Airways had to go out and do recruitment because this is a bigger size plane. It carries up to 580 passengers. It's for long-haul flights. They wanted people who had experience of working within similar aircrafts like 747s. And the performance management and the criteria for recruitment was designed around the experience, to pick out basically experienced, people who could come in and, actually work within this particular role. And their performance was, basically their performance cycle and the reward management system was tailored around managing the expectation of customers, with regards to that particular, let's put it this way, product. So in this case, the plane. And if I have to just go back and quickly look at, giving you a background. So if you look at British Airways, it flies with different types of aircrafts. There are aircrafts which are 737-200s, the 737-400, there are jumbo aircrafts and things like that. Now, for each type of plane, there are different set of passengers they fly. Now, the crew in an aircraft which takes only, say, 120 passengers and a plane which takes 580 passengers, there's a differentiation in the type of crew being recruited for those aircrafts, because they will want somebody who can work quickly, take multiple responsibility, because they cannot increase the number of bodies on an aircraft just because they're carrying more passengers. Maybe the flight crew still remains the same, anywhere between 8 to 14 people on a jumbo aircraft. So when they do recruitment, they are looking for specific qualities which they want when they recruit, people for these kind of positions. And that is where their pay package, their reward management, their compensation, everything tends to vary, because some of these will be on short-haul flights. They will be expected to take 2 or 3 flights a day, but some of them are on long-haul flights, so they get different benefits. Long-haul flight crews normally stay overnight in different destinations because of the working hour regulations. They cannot work beyond a shift of 10 or 11 hours or 12 hours in certain cases, so they have to take a rest. But in the case of short-haul flights, what you will see is that the air hostesses, the pilots, typically fly from, say, London to Manchester, take an hour's break, or maybe they have a continuous flight from Manchester to, Edinburgh, and from there onwards back to London. But this all happens in a day because the working day is not going beyond 3 to 4 hours. So as an HR manager, would you see a differentiation in terms of how you will design their pay package, their compensation, and also their reward management? Yes or no?
I'm so sorry.
Would you have a differentiation in the pay package in the way the reward management is done for somebody who's flying on a long-haul flight from London to New York, or from a point of view somebody who's doing short-haul flights between London, Manchester, Edinburgh, and back to London in the same day? Would you see some differences in the pay package or the type of people working within these in these job shifts?
Okay. And the pay package, depending on the distance of the journey, you will consider a different package for each of the hostesses or the cabin crew. Now, if you're doing a 2-hour flight and someone else is doing a 4-hour flight, you don't expect both of you to be on the same pay range because you are going. So we need to consider that first. So the more hours you fly, I think the more compensation you should get. And also, for the people involved in each flight, you need to check their personality. Now, some people cannot withstand, let me just use the word, overbearing flight passengers. Some people could just want to bother you, keep asking questions or asking you to bring stuff. So you need to check out those that will be extremely patient with this passenger before you recruit them and put them on board. Because you don't want a situation whereby they will be rude to the passengers. If they're rude to the passengers, they would lose potential clients and they will lose people boarding the aircraft.
Totally agree. So you've understood the point that I was trying to make is when you design, now that you've understood this, the reason we could have picked up an example, so this is one type, we could pick up an example on the financial industry side, we could pick up an example within the engineering or production side, when you look at car manufacturing. So people on the shop floor might be paid more because they're assembling, parts or are on a running assembly. And in this case, what will happen is that they will need to be more kind of agile and more alert because they work on a moving part assembly within the plant. So here, as long as you understood that objective, so why we are looking at understanding this in a bit more detail was that sometimes it's horses for courses. So it's sometimes very different, and as an HR manager, you have to understand the job, you have to understand the skill set of the person, and you have to put appropriate people in that place to be able to work and carry out that responsibility. And because there is a differentiation in terms of the roles and responsibility, the kind of work they do, you have to have a differentiation in the case of how you define a reward management system or how you define a performance management system for these different sets of people working within the organization. So that's good. Now let's look at the second aspect. Now the second aspect is when we talk about performance management, there are two types of performance management which can happen. One, you're measuring the performance of the employee within the organization. The other is there is somebody over and above the individual wherein they also look at monitoring the organizational performance. And there is a system which is also put in place, to measure the organizational performance. So when we talk about that, you have people who manage people, and as managers, they look at managing the performance of the staff that they manage or they have in terms of responsibility. But at some stage, when you look at, there are people outside the organization which are critical of the organizational performance. Could you think of people which are outside the organization and they are responsible, or they give some sort of a judgment on how the overall company is performing? What would be those people? Can you think of anybody?
No.
Okay, and I'll give you a bit of a hint. Now, if you look at a particular organization, and we look at a particular organizational structure, you have a lot of people in the front desk, somebody manages them in the background, the manager is managed by a general manager, the general manager is managed by a vice president, and the vice president is managed by maybe the CEO or the chief executive of the organization. Now, who measures what measures or where is the actions of the chief executive accountable to. The chief executive reports to the board of the organization or the chairman of the organization, and the board and the chairman report to somebody indirectly, which is shareholders, stakeholders of the organization, and they are the ones which basically look at giving some sort of a judgment on how the organization is performing. So when we hear the term that this company's share price is taking a beating in the market, is because the results have not come as expected or as declared by the management. Sometimes you see that their stock price in the market takes a beating. That means they have a fall, and so many millions or billions of pounds are wiped off their say the share price. So when you look at a recent example of Apple missing in the last let's say 20 years, this is the first time that Apple is going to be missing their targets which they've set out for the next quarter. So they're going to be falling short of 5 billion in terms of their sales, because they say the China market is slowing, and because of which the iPhone sales are being affected. So what has happened because of that? The chief executive, the management had committed that we will be achieving, say, 85 billion in terms of turnover for the quarter ending Christmas, but they've fallen short of the 89, which was actually forecasted, 89 or 90, if I may say. Now, because of which their share price fell 17%, and 55 billion was wiped out from the share market value of Apple as a company. And there, the verdict was given because the performance of the organization as a whole did not meet the expectation of investors, shareholders, and stakeholders. There, the measurement happened on the stock exchange. Do you understand that? Are you with me on that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Similarly, when we look at the point that I'm trying to look at is when we look at measuring employee performance, that can be done within the organization, and you're accountable to someone. So your manager or somebody, your boss, will actually measure your performance, and that's also with the performance appraisal. But when we look at measuring the performance of an organization or a business, that measurement of performance or of the organization is done at the stock market by investors, by the board, or the key stakeholders which are which have stake into the organization. Now, looking at some of the points, when we look at how you will measure an individual's performance, within the organization, what are the points which come to your mind? One is most employees are expected to be punctual on their job routines. That means if you work within a factory, you're expected to work between such and such time. If you work within an office, so punctuality is one of the elements on which employee performance is measured. How punctual are you to the office? Now, the second point could be quality of work. The kind of work that you deliver, is it meeting the standards to which the employer's expectation is? Is it able to add value to what you're doing? And last but not the least, quality is quite important, is because is it leading to increase in revenue, or the work that you're doing is increasing the turnover of the company or not? Because at some stage, all the work done by employees within the organization can be financially translated into some sort of a revenue. Correct? Okay. A simple example of this that I would give is, if you look at the role of a receptionist within the organization, if the receptionist picks up the phone calls and is able to quickly transfer, and if you're a customer services organization, if you receive more calls and you're able to handle more calls and effectively handle them and pass them on to the customers, there also her role can be linked to financial performance. And if she's able to take quickly calls and she knows exactly where to pass the calls on to, then more customers get dealt on a particular day, and that would mean that eventually at some stage it could have meant that there is more revenue or more business coming into the company. The employee can also be looked at from a measurement perspective in terms of personal habits. You could be looking at habits like which are related to behavior. And one of the key things that we look at, when you remember, when we look at reward management system, intrinsic and extrinsic, the HR looks at behavior and attitude of an individual before designing a reward system around that. Are you motivated enough? Is your behavior bringing across a positive engagement each job? And that relates to what is called the personal habits when we look at individuals. So here what we're talking about essentially is the HR and the employee, your manager basically observes the employee to see if they are exhibiting the right amount of, right attitude and behavior while doing these functions on a day in, day out basis. So things like sometimes in large organizations, they expect that when you leave your desk, please make sure it's clean, you switch off your PC in order to, and that is considered a norm because it is given out to you on an employee handbook. Because if you have 5,000 people working on a floor or 2,000 people working on a floor, large numbers essentially, what I mean is, if everybody leaves the PC on, then it is going to rack up the electricity bill overnight when the PCs are on for a company. So in this case, personal habits are looked at because this shows that you have an attitude of, you have an attitude, caring attitude towards ensuring that you're maybe helping preserve environment, reduce the bill, and you're making sure that, you leave your desk and station quite clean and tidy, which basically is something which is a personal habit. Now, there are other things which sometimes, HR can do is that they can check potentially the attitude of an individual to measure the individual's performance. Now, how does that happen? That happens primarily through a 360-degree performance appraisal method. So while they look at doing an annual appraisal, what they do is they also send out some sort of a survey or an appraisal format that an employee would be apprised by not just the manager or the person he reports into, but by peers and also with people that he or she might deal with on a day-to-day basis because of the job responsibility or the job function that you do. And in this case, other employees which are indirectly or directly working with you also have an opportunity to comment on, how they feel the person is performing with regards to the role or the responsibility given. So this kind of performance appraisal, which sometimes is lent out through a survey or some sort of a survey in the organization, collecting feedback from different individuals which at some stage come in contact and contribute towards the working of your job responsibility, is called the 360-degree method. And here the idea is to measure the performance of the employee and also the organization and what contribution you have made and what contribution the organization is making to help you achieve that goal. So it's a 360-degree loop wherein it's not just the employee being appraised, but also the organization being appraised from a point of view of different people who look at giving some sort of a verdict or some sort of a opinion about how they feel the individual actually performs within that role. And this comes under something called a standard testing method, which are basically used and designed over the years by HR department to measure the employee performance of the employee essentially. Is that okay?
Yes, please.
Now, most organizations used to do it through the appraisal route earlier, but now with the coming in of technology, some of these are done through Google surveys or some sort of surveys which can be floated across as questionnaires electronically, and then most of the users who end up getting it can actually go through that survey form or that questionnaire to evaluate the performance of the individual. Now, when we have to looking at measuring organizational performance. Now, organizational performance measurement of that is something which is a large scale process. So here sometimes you will see that the management which has set out goals and objectives would look at doing a quarterly review or a 6-monthly review to see if they are meeting or going as per planned to achieve the targets. Going back to the same example of what I've given for Apple, normally what large companies do is they give out a financial forecast in terms of what their profitability, turnover, sales would be, and these are done across on what you call the business or financial analyst calls. And these are done primarily because they see the business, for the organization quite well set, and because of which, over the years, when they've studied all the important indicators of how the business is driven, they can predict how much. When I say how much, they can predict actually the output of the organization in terms of revenue, profit, sales, and some of the other key indicators which are required by the financial markets in order to when I say financial market, these are for companies which are basically trading or are publicly listed companies. So here, one of the key things when we look at measuring organizational performance is, if you have to put out keywords, what would be the measurement factor? One of the measurement factors is the organization or business hitting the target or not? As simple as that. You know, if you look at talking about companies and you've invested in a company as an investor, as a shareholder, your key idea is how much of earnings per share will I get at the end of the year? Will I get any dividend or not? And is the company achieving target? Is the sales increasing? Is the profitability increasing or not? And if this is not the case, then you see senior management stepping in to reassess the whole business plan to a certain extent, to see why the sales are not going to be achieved, or why the sale plan that they put in place is not going as per what is this supposed to do. And here, in order to measure that, they start kind of, you know, taking or re-examining the whole plan. And sometimes this would require things like the SWOT analysis. SWOT analysis being the entry-level tool, which would mean that you're looking at re-evaluating your strengths and weaknesses. You're looking at what are the opportunities and threat with regards to your competitors in the market. What factors are hitting you? What factors are, you know, making the business conducive? And in some cases, what factors are actually deterring the amount of business that you are trying to get, and you know, it is affecting the business. So they re-examine using maybe a very special or a very used to kind of a tool, say SWOT analysis. And this starts off by the management sending a quick email to employees to say, could you do a quick SWOT and see, are you on course to achieve the target? Are you on course to achieve the objective set for this month, next month, and the month after that? So it could be in any shape or form. And once they start getting the input, they start getting the feelers or the information from there that this is not happening, this is not happening, and that is what then starts to, kind of come up in a report, wherein the top management then starts to reassess the plan to see why the performance is not being, why the performance is, or the output in terms of the performance is not being met. Now, sometimes you will see what the organizations do. So if they are trying to measure the organizational performance, they are seeing that there's a gap area in terms of revenue, or the turnover or the target is not going to be achieved. Couple of things that they can do is, one, they look at making changes. The reason why they look at making changes is because they want to bring in individuals who can come in and, you know, make a change, or at least try and drive a change so that the performance can be boosted. In some cases, you will look at that they look at making some changes in terms of policy areas, pricing areas. So a simple example of this would be when you look at a football match, right? Why do you think the manager makes substitutions? If they're under pressure, if they're a goal down, and the manager reassesses the situation during halftime, and what the manager then gets to do, wear the HR kind of a hat, HR manager's hat, and what he does is he brings on his best substitutes in order to salvage or, you know, change the game, the outcome of the game. Now, in the case of companies, you will see that sometimes if they have excess inventory, excess stock, and the sales are not being driven, they come out with what is called the promotional offers or schemes, which the idea is to try and boost sales so that they could try and cover, the revenue by offering discounts or incentives to customers and by persuading them to buy. So what is this? This is primarily a strategy which the company implies to, at the organizational level, change the direction, and this is done by people in, power, by management essentially. So, giving you two examples, if you consider a football manager's role, and in the case in this, if you look at companies when they come out with promotional offers or marketing schemes and things like that, they say, okay, 50% off, or 200 pounds off on this if you buy between such and such date. The reason is they're trying to boost the sales up, and that's what also you tend to see happens in most sales organization, which is then in a way trying to course correct. When you look at the Thanksgiving sales, Black Friday as a concept, the reason is most companies are looking at doing that, but the HR in the background understands this, and they put a reward mechanism in place that, okay, if the sales are being driven by promotion and the activities are happening, they need to push for more incentives, which the employees can get if they try and achieve the target. Is that okay?
Okay.
Now, let's look at some of the other things which can be done, in order to boost the performance, of individuals within the organization. You'll normally see that, sometimes your line managers would encourage you and give you feedback that you're doing right, you're doing something good, and you should carry on with that. They try and do this because they want the employees to participate and get regular feedback in terms of how they're performing. And this tends to be directly linked to motivation and directly linking to the engagement which they're able to draw from an individual. So it is like you're being a people's manager, and because you're a people's manager, you take care of your staff and you understand the areas in which they are having issues or problems, and you go out and proactively solve them, which basically also allows at some stage the overall performance of a team to be bettered, or it increases the overall performance of the team. Now, having understood this very briefly from a point of view of employee performance and organizational performance, let's put in something into the mix to understand what is team performance. Sometimes you will see that organizations work in teams. They create teams because the objectives to be achieved are larger than what an individual can achieve, a single individual can achieve. So here, sometimes the targets are given which are team-based targets, or rewards which are then created are basically for the team. Now, you will see that in most cases, again taking an example here, that in most cases you will see different, let's look at an example of, say, a sales organization, and they have different regional managers. Under regional managers, they have sales managers. Now, different regions are given different targets sometimes because the regions hold potential. And an example which I would give you, case in point here, would be when you look at London market, when you look at the Northwest market, or when you look at, say, for example, larger markets, the targets given in larger markets are higher to sales managers. The targets given to somebody who is in a little, when I say little, when I say people or managers working within a smaller market will have targets related to that size of the market as well. So if somebody is working and staying within a metropolitan city or a large city, like you look at London, Paris, New York, some of the large cities, what you will see is that these cities, the sales manager would carry a large target or a higher target because they have more potential to achieve that target. The population size is more, the businesses are more, and all those things are there. But if the same sales manager is given a target in a smaller location or a smaller city wherein the population is less, the businesses are less, the output in general in the market is less, then that will create disparity. So sometimes when you look at this as a concept, what happens is the organization actually splits the individuals into teams, and the team targets are given wherein they know that this team is having the responsibility to manage, for example, these 3, 4, 5 cities in which they have 2 big cities, 2 small, and 1 small city. And similarly, when they make the team on the other side, they look at equally distributing so that they stand a very good chance of the teams hitting their target. So here, the HR managers then look at creating a reward system which functions on the basis of the team achieving or hitting the target. So team rewards basically include rewards for the whole team, and they tend to be given out if the team achieves the target. Now here again, when we look at team rewards or some sort of team rewards which are created, they are done primarily to again ensure that there is synergy, there is motivation, there's loyalty and engagement within each and every individual of the member of the team, whether they contribute 1%, 10%, 15%, or 50% towards the overall team goal or the achievement of that target. Now, what we want to understand is when we look at team-based reward system or team-based targets being given, then there are systems that the HR manager has to decide or design essentially have to be addressing the team-based achievements. Now here, some of them could be things like incentive pay, it could be recognition, it could be profit sharing, or it could be gain sharing. That means if you get more revenue, you get a bit more percentage and more in terms of your payout that you get in terms of incentive. So these are then differentiations which are created within the team, wherein most of the employees would receive money if the target is met. Most of the employees would receive some sort of a recognition, but the recognition would go into the team, and that team, would be decided as, okay, Team Delta has, done this, Team Delta has been awarded this. And obviously, in higher cases, or when I look at, when I say different situations, sometimes you will see even profit sharing, or, in smaller organizations, in larger places, sometimes you will see profit sharing also being given. So if you achieve this much revenue, you get this much of profit share. Now, let's look at very briefly in terms of, understanding that what is the potential, what are the potentials, positives when you're working within a team and you have a team-based reward system, and what are the drawbacks if you are working within a team, and the drawbacks of team-based reward system. Now here, sometimes you will see that the manager is able to carry the performance of even of the poor individuals, because the overall team performance actually matters. So he focuses on ensuring that everybody in the team are able to work together and, try and achieve the overall objective. Now, who contributes more, who contributes less is of less importance, because the goal is to get the whole team past the finish line. So the person managing the team has that important responsibility of getting everybody together and getting everybody together to go after the objective. The contributions could vary when you are working within a team, and again, at the end of it, when the rewards have to be given out, the team manager or the team leader actually says that, okay, this person introduced, brought the contributions of the individuals, is basically he keeps a track of the contributions they made, and depending on the contribution, the incentive pay and the recognition and the profit sharing is done. Now, teams also sometimes a team reward system can also be good, because it gives the opportunity to the team leader to allocate rewards in a fair way. And that is seen when we look at some of the components here. So he might give incentive pay to everybody, but recognition and profit sharing might be given to individuals, who have performed the maximum contribution. Okay. Now, recognition could be to one individual within the team. They would say, okay, he's the hero of the team because he's the one who's performed the best, and he ends up picking the trophy or getting the trophy. But maybe the incentive is shared amongst all, and profit sharing might happen with only one or two individuals who have contributed the highest, if we look at a situation of, a team reward. Now, the other things that we look at is that there is a benefit of having team-based reward system, is that everybody is motivated when they work within a team, and they are not too kind of glued upon or, focused on that I need to achieve my target. What they are focused on is that we need to achieve the team target. And this then helps sometimes the managers to, keep the whole team motivated towards achieving the team goal. So depending on the skill set, sometimes you will see they will put people in administrative role, in proactive role, in a team leader role, or in a role which they feel he or she would be able to carry out very well. So the benefits are that the manager is able to, they have the freedom one, and they have the ability to be able to kind of give out roles and responsibilities within the team in order to ensure that this is the best structure and this is the best output which the team can produce. And basis that, he tries to achieve or she tries to achieve the team objective. Now, what could be the drawbacks? The drawbacks is that not all employees at some stage would feel motivated, because they say that I've contributed more, and because of me, everybody else has shared the rewards or awards, and it should have only come to me. So here, the manager at this stage would try to, when they put together teams, they look at teams which can work in synergy. They look at individuals which can work in synergy. They can come and contribute and look out for each other, and that is why the picking of the team is very important. So when the reward system is put into place, it is very important in team-based reward systems that they pick and choose individuals which are going to be able to work and gel together when they are given an objective or responsibility to fulfill. So the drawback of the team-based reward system could be that all employees do not get an equal chance in the team. Some of them will be assigned some responsibility depending on what their skill set is by the manager, and they'll have to basically take that up. In some cases, you will see that the team-based reward system keeps too much control and too much control in the hands of the team leader. And this way, sometimes you will see some employees shy away from sharing their opinion and feel that the roles and responsibilities attributed to them could be something which they are not happy with. So they feel a bit of bias on that side. And sometimes you will see one of the drawbacks which tends to happen in a team-based reward system is that sometimes you will see some workers might not be able to contribute that as effectively as they want to as against the other members in the team, which could be because of various reasons. Could be because the person is not present here or is external to the team or is in a remote location, and that would mean that they feel that they have got left out and they could have contributed more. So what we are talking about is that when an HR manager looks at putting together a team-based reward system, they have to look at the positives and the negatives, and they have to evaluate what are the advantages going to be and what are the drawbacks going to be, so that when teams are created and the reward system is created, they get people and individuals within those teams to work together, which are going to be synergistic and looking out for each other rather than being individuals which look at self-performance and individuals which are not going to gel with the team. So sometimes when we look at the team-based reward management systems, what we do see that in certain types of businesses, this is going to surely work. So when you look at the retail sector, and when you look at, say, for example, large retail stores, here the most of the rewards or the incentives which are put in for the store. There are individual incentives also put that the person crossing the highest sales or will get certain sort of incentive or pay increase, but mostly the whole performance of the store is team based, because what they want to do is they want to reduce pilferage or pickings from the store which can happen, theft from the store which can happen. They want to look at getting the best of customer services, reviews, and serving as many customers as possible. They want to increase the revenue, and that is where when you look at large stores, there are different departments which have different employees working, and the general manager or the director of the store is actually responsible for delegating those responsibilities in such a way that he picks out these key skill sets and the value-added areas in which that individual can work by using his prior experience and skills to serve the customers better. And when you look at that, that is where the team-based reward systems are put in place, because what they say is they always sometimes put you in teams, 1+1. So you're going to be looking after the aisles, you're looking at tidying the aisles, you're looking at working on the till, you're looking at, obviously working on the queues. So sometimes you will get to see this in action, because there the team-based system does work, because you have more, basically you have more work. It requires multitasking, and there has to be an area wherein, some sort of a resolve wherein the team comes to the rescue, or let me not use the word rescue, but the team actually works together hand in hand to be able to carry out the functions on a day-to-day basis. And here, the individual, reward systems might not work. So, in the case of, say, ASDAs, or, when we look at an example here in the UK, most stores have a target of keeping the pickings or the pilferage from the store, theft from the store, at less than 2% of their annual revenue. And if that target is met, most employees get some sort of a bonus at the end of the year during Christmas, because each and everyone is responsible for keeping their eyes and ears open and ensuring that the theft and the pilferage does not happen in the store. Now, this cannot be an individual target, because the store is, thousands of square feet in size, with so many products, so many customers at one point in time within the store. Everyone's eyes and ears have to be open, and they have to be vigilant to ensure that the pilferage does not happen or the theft does not happen. So here it is a team target, and sometimes for these qualitative team targets, team-based reward systems have to be put in place, and that depends on the nature of the business. And obviously, sometimes HR managers have to look at that broad-basing approach of ensuring that, okay, if this is done and this is achieved, they have a discussion with the functional head or the department head and say, okay, if this is done, this is achieved, which meets the organizational objective, there are team-based rewards which are going to be there. But the team leader then has the ability to be able to decide where, how the team is to be put together, but also the type of incentives which can be put together in that system when we follow team-based reward system. Is that okay? Now, let's look at, the conclusion. So when we look at, say, for example, looking at going back and look at this particular unit, what we are looking at is that in most cases, reward systems are put in place because organizations clearly understand that employees are the biggest asset for the business. And if they are treated well and they are given all the facilities and all the requisites to be able to perform well, the organization will meet its goal. And that is why performance and reward systems are put in place. The second thing that we look at, which culminates from this unit would be that when we look at, lots of things which are coming up with regards to, retaining the talent, training the talent, learning and development. We look at basically understanding, engagement, and we want commitment and motivation from the employees. We tend to see that, at some stage, if fairness, equity, all this motivation has to be created within the organization, we need to understand that at some stage, the organizations need to put some sort of a benchmark, and that benchmark comes in order to ensure that their performance is measured against that benchmark. And once they meet that performance, they get some reward incentive or some sort of a bonus, increase in pay, and that tends to fall under the umbrella of what is called the reward management system. Is that okay?
Okay.
Yeah. Any questions on this so far?
No.
Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to also give you a bit of a handout, which is going to basically talk about, the design and implementation of, how it starts off when I showed you the performance appraisal and how it starts off from there and how you design, a reward management system in the organization.
Okay. So you're sending the handout to me?
Yes. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to open that. If I can't, and I'm going to try and send it to you.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
So,
Hello?
yeah, give me 1 second. So just very briefly, looking at, understanding this, 1 second.
There's nothing on my screen now.
Yeah, I've just unshared the screen for a second. Give me 1 minute. I'm trying to open a document which I want you to basically see.
Okay.
And that is what we'll be basically looking at, giving you some, detail for you to study.
Okay.
So just sharing that now. So what we want to understand is how the implementation is done, and I've got a small paper which I want you to look at, and that would give you, some bit of additional reading to understand what are the challenges which HR managers actually face when they try and design and put together a reward management system when they implement that within the organization. So that is something that is a bit of a reading that you could do. Give me just 1 second. There we go. So this particular document that we look at, which is understanding how, once the system has been designed, what are the key, things the HR has to consider that before they implement this system, and what are the key challenges. So this is a bit of a small, I would say, paper that you could read, which basically says how the performance management systems in the organizations have been evolving over the years, and then when the appraisals are done, convert them into the personal development plans, and then the ratings are done, and then identification of gap areas are done to put some sort of training and development in place. How do they look at designing a reward system which is apt for the employees at different grades within or different levels within the organization? So this is something that is a good read that you could do, and how this is implemented within organizations can be read as a research paper, because this is a research paper published by the Institute of Employment Studies, and it provides a bit of a background and insight into how organizations cope with when they set targets, measure targets, look at performance management, and then create commensurate reward management systems in the organization at different levels to keep the employees motivated and engaged within their job and job responsibilities. Okay?
Yes.
Now, good stuff. Just very briefly looking at, if I go back to the assignment brief. Now, in the assignment brief, essentially, it's a two-part assignment brief. You're looking at assuming a role that you applied for a job in the university as a lecturer, and you're going to be teaching strategic management. And the university selection team has allocated a topic of performance and reward management for you to discuss in your interview. Now, what you're asked to do is undertake, in terms of a Word document. You remember the theories and models that we've covered, the intrinsic, intrinsic, the
intrinsic and extrinsic,
and apart from that, the expectancy theory, the goal factor theory. So those have to be covered, and the framework has to be covered of the reward management.
What about the Parent
model is going to come in reward management. So frameworks for reward management and theories like the expectancy theory, the goal setting theory covered in performance management. Now, you have to discuss relevance of reward management to employee and organizational performance, right? So this is something that we covered today in today's presentation, of measuring organizational performance and individual and organizational performance, which is this. Okay. Then the third bit talks about certain external factors. You have to discuss what are the external factors which affect the organizational performance and how do they relate to the reward management system. So we talked about the PESTEL yesterday. We talked about labor laws. We talked about laws and legislation when organizations work across different countries. We have to follow that, has to come here. Now, when we talk about effective techniques to understand how they are applied, we took the example of British Airways as an airline, and in the 90s when they were looking at grappling with their image, they looked at designing a system which employed or recruited staff which was more customer focused and customer services oriented, and all the reward and management systems were designed around that. So here you have to basically talk about that particular bit. And last but not the least, yesterday's topic wherein we discussed the relevance between linkage between performance and reward management. And on Moodle, what I've also done when I put two handouts which basically show the linkage between performance and reward management, performance and learning and development. And these two handouts is what I would suggest you would need to read, and then extracts of that will actually come into this task. So these two handouts which talk about the relationship between reward and employee performance, and employee performance on job satisfaction.
Okay.
In part 2 of the report, you're looking at again a Word document here, and here they are asking you to evaluate performance and reward management systems in a chosen organization. Now you could choose British Airways, continue with that theme, or pick an organization of your choice and maybe do a bit of research to try and find out what kind of reward mechanisms they have in place, and that has to be spoken about here.
Okay.
Okay, and the second part of that would be to discuss various methods of how companies implement employee measurement and organizational performance. So we discussed a few factors like punctuality, we discussed factors like, attitude, behavior, quality of work being delivered. These are going to be the various methods. Basically, the standard testing technique method, 360-degree appraisal, balanced scorecard are going to come here.
Okay.
And last but not the least, we are going to assess the potential drawbacks of creating team-based reward systems. So we've discussed some advantages and some drawbacks, and that is what you need to put across in a table here.
Yeah, okay.
Is that okay? So the context given in the assignment is basically looking at your interviewing for a job role as a lecturer to teach HRM, and you've been asked to basically present these topics, to the panel during the interview. And in this, you've been asked to cover all the tasks of the assignment brief, of the unit essentially that we've covered. All these tasks here.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yes.
So I'm going to upload the copy of the presentation on Moodle right now, along with this handout of the book that I've shown you, which I would suggest that you need to look at for Learning Outcome 3 as a handout. And that would help you to primarily, cover the topics up that we've discussed today.
Okay.
Brilliant. So now we are going to look at the next unit, which is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday next week.
Next week. Okay.
Yeah. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday next week, same time, and that is employment legislation.
Okay.
And that has also got 3 learning outcomes or 2 learning outcomes essentially, and that is what we'll cover, next week.
Okay.
So that will be our last unit. Now, apart from this, there was a research unit that we had covered initially. That is Unit 8. And research unit is something you have to pick out an area of research and do some research on it. I don't know whether you started, not started, but that is something that we have to look at. So that bit I'm going to upload on Moodle right now because it is a bit scant here in terms of the data, but I've got everything. So I'm going to try and upload things on this site right now just after the session so that you are able to see various chapters, things like how to look at introduction, setting up an objective, literature review, things like research methodology, and then putting together findings for the research. Good stuff. So with this, I'm going to try and end the session now, and I'll catch up with you next week. You have a good weekend, and if you have any questions, queries, if you need anything additional, please send me an email, and I'll come back to you on the email pretty promptly.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Elianka. Take care. Thank you.